always fun to get up and just talk with founders. I am a founder in a couple different areas. I own the Prime car washes around town as well, and then I went on to start Vibenomics, which Vibenomics is that thing that encourages you to buy things when you're in stores at like Kroger or when you're at the gas station and you see all those little annoying things barking at you to go in and buy more peanuts and more M&Ms and all of that. That's my software that runs those. So we're in about 50,000 locations now globally. We got acquired, Vibenomics got acquired roughly about 7 months ago, and I am on the other side of getting to work with a private equity company, which will be an entirely different panel, and you guys can come out for that one because it's a different story. But we're going to get started with our panelists, and I'd love for you all to introduce yourselves and just maybe take 15, 20 seconds to talk. But Mike, I'll start with you. Mike Reynolds, CEO of Innovatemap.
Yeah, thanks for having us here. Mike Reynolds, CEO of Innovatemap. I've been in digital products for 25 years, product executive roles at SaaS companies, and then 10 years ago, founded the firm I wish was available to me if I was an early stage founder, which is access to an elite team of product experts to help you kind of land product market fit at a stage when it's most coveted. So we'll help a founder with basically strategy and design services, and we partner with early stage companies to get that right.
Mike has had the ability to touch probably many of you in this room from a marketing perspective, an idea perspective. I know that he was super helpful for me when I was starting out, so it's been great. Next person, Darrian Mikell, co-founder and CEO of Qualifi.
Thanks. Yep, I'm Darrian Mikell, co-founder, CEO of Qualifi. We are primarily based here. We're a remote team, so we have folks across the country, but started this company about 5 years ago, focused on helping recruiters automate their process, starting with the phone interview through scheduling and live interviewing. Excited to share with y'all.
Fantastic. Julio Regan, CEO and co-founder of RxLightning. Sorry, I jumped you, didn't I?
Hi, y'all. My name's Julie Regan. I'm the founder and CEO of RxLightning. We're a digital health company that's helping patients get their specialty medications faster and more affordably. I'm a first female entrepreneur with Endeavor Entrepreneur in the region. I'm a EY Entrepreneur of the Year in the Mid-Central region, and I'm a 4-time Mirror Award winner.
Flex.
Love it.
You literally can do it.
Wow. Last but not least, Amy Brown, CEO of Authenticx.
Hey everyone, so I'm Amy Brown. I grew up here in the Hoosier State, went to IU, started my career in state government. After working about 20 years in the business of healthcare, and at the age of 42, and after having 4 children and a husband who is a stay-at-home dad, I decided, what the hell? I'm gonna quit my job and start a company. And so I did that in 2018. Authenticx is a conversational intelligence company, but we are not a chatbot. We are a company that's all about listening, and we listen to those conversations when you call customer service and it says this call is being recorded for quality and monitoring purposes. We're the company that listens to those conversations. Last year we listened to over 200 million customer conversations exclusively in healthcare. So our customers are pharma, health insurance, and health and hospital systems because, they don't have any problems that we need to help them solve. Oh, and just for my mic drop moment, last week we were named by Inc. 5000 as the 47th fastest growing software company in the US.
Yeah. All right, well, since you're on a roll, we're going to stay with you for the first question. So I guess most founders and CEOs, the question that you're asked all the time is, how did you get started? And usually they expect an answer of, I have all this experience in software, I have all this experience in these things. Most of the time, I actually believe that a founder did not start with all this experience. They have to surround themselves with a lot of people who understand and know, and I'd just love for you to share your journey of how you got into what you were doing.
Yeah, I think for me, it all started with having enough experience in a market that I could see a problem that I became super passionate about. And I knew it deeply because I had spent 20 years working in it. And so I knew the problem really well, and I knew the buyer because I was the buyer. And so when I took the big leap and left my corporate career, I had all that experience and was ready to sell. The problem was I am an operator. I have zero tech background. I've never built a tech company. I've never done SaaS before. I've never raised venture capital before. And so there was a lot I didn't know. And so I was able to surround myself, just because Indiana has a great, and Indy has a great ecosystem helping early stage founders to get the product help I needed from Innovatemap. I was able to get advisory support from other companies that have been successful in Indy, and I'm grateful for it. We'd never be here today without having an ecosystem that allowed me to bring what I could to the table, but also gain the experience that I didn't have. And it was the marriage of what I had and what I didn't have that made it work.
No, I like it. And there's, it's interesting. I'm aging myself a little bit, but just thinking about when I started Prime Car Wash about 12 years ago, there were so many things at my disposal as a Main Street business to get going and get things started. And as I started to get into starting Vibenomics in the software world, there was no information, there was no one to just go talk to and have support you. And I think that was a big piece of the ITIA and what we wanted to bring and start. So I love hearing that is very much changed in Indiana. So Julia, moving on to you. I know I could hear by the way you started with y'all. You are South and probably could have put your business in Kentucky. Or you could have brought your business here to Indiana. So I'm just wondering what really motivated you to start things here in Indiana.
Shockingly, I'm from Pennsylvania.
And you started with y'all.
Well, once you move south, I guess.
That's right.
I think the biggest thing when I looked at, so we're on the coast or the river line of Indiana and Kentucky. So when we were really considering, like, do we incorporate, and well, we incorporated in Jersey, let's face it. But when we decided, like, where do we want our headquarters to be, Indiana or Kentucky, it was really about the incentives that were going to be created. The cost on the Kentucky side is actually more expensive than staying in southern Indiana. When I think about growing and scaling an organization, operating costs in the Midwest is so much more efficient from a capital perspective versus going into like a major hub. But for us, it was around like what incentives could we get. We knew we were going to grow very rapidly over the course of the next several years. And when I looked at Kentucky, it was all around like machinery and what investment we were going to put into equipment. Well, I'm a technology company. I get a couple $1,000s on laptops if we're lucky, and computer screens. So Indiana really looked at creating a custom package for us, not at the state, just at the state level, but at the local New Albany level. And one of the things that New Albany is looking at is how do we develop our economy and create jobs that aren't just average income jobs, but high-paying quality jobs. So the fact that we are, I think, 3 or 4 times higher than the average wage of the city, we were able to just essentially get grant money. It's not packaged that way, but if we hit very simple milestones over the next 4 years, we just get a cash grant, basically. And then the state looked at our growth and our people and how we would train these people. I think for high growth startups, it's a combination of experienced individuals and net new employees that are coming into the workforce and training and developing them. So not only getting credits for the new individuals that we were hiring, but also the experienced individuals that would be training them and developing them to make sure that we're creating long-term benefits for the local market, whether it's with RxLightning or another organization. So that is what really made us settle on Indiana being our final headquarters.
Just another story that's interesting. As I was going through and Jeff Kirk, our attorney, is in the house. So as we were going through this merger, one of the things that was exciting for the company that was buying us is that we were based here in Indiana, and we still did have a lot of tax credits and things that they could utilize down the road, especially when they baked us in and we became a profitable company. So it does matter, and it is important, and that's why we fight really hard for all of those breaks as much as we can. So another piece of the puzzle, obviously, is the true oxygen that founders and all of us need to stay alive, which is the important capital. And it was always one of those things when I was raising money, I always heard, Indiana's tough, you're going to have a hard time finding capital here. And I believe that is changing. I believe that people are starting to look to more Midwest and specifically in Indiana. But I'd love to just hear for, some of those people who are starting at very small seed rounds all the way up to Series A and B. Just some of the things. Darrian, maybe you could take this one on just, what you've gone through in raising money and the things that have come against that are good, bad, or indifferent. Yeah,
for sure. So context, this is the second startup company that I've been a part of. The first one that I've been the founder and the CEO of. Last one was a bootstrap company, and so I got to experience that from the ground up, and the benefits, the pros and cons that come with that. And then in this company, I've experienced everything from angels, accelerators, and we've raised a couple of VC rounds in total, around 8 million so far. And I think the what I've experienced here in Indiana specifically is that there's a full community. Like there's from founders to capital, it exists here. One of the challenges that I've personally come against is one, I've always advocated that we need more capital at the earliest stages. I think that one of the distinguishing factors from other tech hubs is that they invest at like what would be like the idea stage and see a lot more at bats. And I think here we need just more at bats to see those big wins. Did I say that right? See more at bats to get those big home runs that everyone hopes for. And then the other piece is just education. I think one of the things from a founder perspective is I thought I knew what it took to raise money. I have a cool idea and a pitch deck. I should be able to go get millions of dollars pretty easily. And I learned over time and through actual education around it that it takes a lot more. You have to, have a methodical process to it. And I think that that's missing for really talented and gifted operators and founders is just that knowledge gap. So that's one thing I always try to share with founders that I get to connect with is, hey, here's what I was doing the wrong way, and here's how you can maybe streamline that the next time around and help save a few gray hairs that they might gain from the hell that is fundraising.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing that was interesting to me, and just another piece of that story, is as I was going through the phases, it was hard for me to know when to go raise the money, and sometimes you do it way too early. You ask for way too much money. You don't ask for enough money. There's just so many dynamics to everybody's businesses and the nuances, and it'd be really nice to have a group and people to go talk to along those lines, because those are the challenging questions, and you really don't get to know if you did it right or wrong until the day that you luckily exit, and all of those things you can look back on and think, glad I did this, or wish I would have done it a little differently. So I guess we'll lean on each other as founders to figure that one out. Mike, who doesn't have to worry about raising money anymore, God bless you. But luckily, you help everybody else in this ecosystem so much go through setting themselves up to look the best, to go out, move the companies along. You've worked with leaders for a long time, and I'd love to just hear, what do you think is kind of the big driving factor behind what makes a successful leader in a company here in Indiana?
Well, the biggest trait on a leader, I'm going to say, is self-awareness. And Amy was a great example in her answer of just knowing what your superpower is, and then being aware to admit first where your weaknesses lie, and then find the right help. And I think And I'll just play the opposite of that. An absolute non-successful founder is the know-it-all, the one who's going to put on airs in front of a pitch deck, make you feel like they know everything. You can see that inauthenticity. The founders that kind of bring their strengths to the table are completely self-aware, whether it be advice, whether it be a hire, whether it be a high-quality service provider. Those that surround themselves with expertise that is complementary to their own skill set is, to me, the biggest leadership trait that I see being the most successful founders.
Yeah. Well, with all of these successful folks, they can only build if they have the people to do it. And obviously, there's challenges right now in finding staff and being able to do it. So I'd actually, Julie, if you wouldn't mind, just talk about how you get your people and the challenges of doing that today.
Yeah, so we were born in COVID. So we were founded in 2020, and we started hiring at the end of that year and have rapidly grown to around 50 employees. And I think some of the biggest challenges is really how have we transitioned from being a remote-only organization to an in-office organization, and the communication and the team cohesion that is a result of having a hybrid organization, and then the willingness of talent to adopt the culture that we want. And we are actively hiring locally for a couple of reasons. One, because of the economic incentives that we have. It makes sense for us as a business to do that. And two, because it allows us to achieve the growth milestones that we need to really achieve, being in a more physical location. So a lot of the challenges that we've had is early on, luckily over the last 12 months we've overcome this, but branding. Nobody knew who RxLightning was and what we did. And so trying to convince top talent to come join your organization when you don't have capital from investors that are known, your name's not known, there aren't people referring in, is something that you have to really overcome. The larger we've gotten, the better investors we've brought in, the better talent we've brought in, the referral system's now in place, and it's much easier to tap into top talent. But being in the Kentuckiana with Louisville, there's a ton of healthcare organizations, but most have been established for years. So it's also the challenge around a cultural fit and a skill set. So we've grown, and I've been looking back at it. Early on, we hired for where we were at, and 3 months later, I didn't have the skill set that I needed in a person because we were 6 months past that in a growth perspective. Never expected to hit those growth milestones. So there was a lot of conscious turnover that we had to make just because the people that got us to a certain spot didn't get us to the next. But the finding the right balance of people that have the skill set to people that are startup focused, because it's risky, it's uncertain, the company could go under regardless of all the positives that are happening. It's just the matter of fact of the market that we're in and the stages that a startup organization is facing. Finding that skill set along with what you need in the future is probably the biggest talent. So we've tapped into recruiters as well as establishing a referral bonus, and then really focused on benefits in the culture that make people come to us. So we've established longer you're with us, we have a sabbatical. So if you make it 5 years that the company is there, you've got a month off. So trying to incentivize people with long-term incentives that make them say, hey, I really want to invest my time and bleed into the organization, my effort, and they're going to get something out of it, is something that I think has helped us recruit some of the top talent when you're looking at some of the other organizations that are locally.
Yeah. Going back to you, Mike, just because I think, obviously companies are going to come up with a tremendous amount of things to do and get people here, but the state as a whole has to be able to build together to have these innovative companies. You're working with leaders, you're working with all of these companies all the time. What are some of the things that the state can be doing to continue the momentum?
Well, more of this, please. What's going on here? And I'll be honest, it blows my mind just being a service provider in the scene. So any health ecosystem, and I'll just focus on a local ecosystem like Indianapolis, you need founders with great ideas, you need talent, you need capital, and then you need help. And under that help umbrella, I put advisors, mentors, high-quality service providers. And it blows my mind how they don't know how to find each other. Right, they don't. I can't tell you how many investors are like, I can't find any good founders. Founders are saying, I can't find any good engineers. You know what I mean? Or I can't find this help. And it's just like, you've got to gather. And I'm making that comment is such room for improvement, even at a local level, but at a state level, that is just incredible opportunity. Like, if you kind of just think about what we've been talking about earlier this morning, could you imagine a Bloomington founder who was well connected with, post-grads, software engineers from Lafayette, with the advice from all these exits and mentorship from Indianapolis, with a check written from South Bend, who we just heard was the best in that. Like, that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen. That is complete state opportunity. I would say that the pain is large in each local opportunity. I'll go to South Bend. We've got some clients up there, and they're just eager to just access to Indianapolis stories. And love making referrals there. I mean, I'm just one person doing that. But I would just say there's a real opportunity to convene the state, to have a vibrant state ecosystem, and just kind of take that mentality to local level, but it shouldn't be absent from the state level as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Amy, I'd love to hear your perspective on the ecosystem here and what things and opportunities Indiana could be providing to kind of do what these two had just been talking about, just overall driving a world-class ecosystem.
Yeah, I think just to first talk about talent and then maybe a little bit about capital. From a talent perspective, I appreciated some of the comments this morning about, it's not just about making sure that there's business incentives, but also as you think about, attracting and retaining talent, it's also about where does that talent want to invest their time in life? And I heard this morning a lot about amenities, right? And that's really important to have communities that offer green space and places for our kids to play, and all of that's super important. I think in addition to that, though, is making sure that our policies are attractive to talent that wants to come and live in Indiana. And as we think about how do we attract and retain talent, how do we attract and retain kids who are graduating from our universities, we should be listening to what they want in their ecosystem in order to invest their time and their money and their raising of families. From a capital perspective, I would say, I was fortunate enough to be benefit from a lot of early stage resources, and really grateful for my seed round and even the support that led to my A round. At this point, I've raised $28 million in capital, and Series A and Series B were led by non-Indiana venture capital firms. And so I would love to see, I'm a Hoosier, and I want to spend my life here, right? I would love to see VCs that are locally based be able to get to a stage where they're writing $10 million checks, $20 million checks. I think that's an opportunity for us. I think, we do a lot of investing in those early stage founders, which is critically important as companies are maturing and as the horses are, the race horses are edging ahead. Those companies need support too to become the next exact target story, right? And so I would just say, don't forget to keep encouraging, supporting those companies that are hitting their milestones.
If I could add to that, Brent, I couldn't agree more, Amy. I think we, especially today, we hear a lot about innovation, starting, maintaining and growing. Could use some help too.
Yeah.
So you've got a company that there's always resources about, let's start, but you get someone that's Amy's company, and there's not a lot of companies that can write $5 million checks here.
Right.
And I will just tell you, if you see in the news that you see companies getting those Series B, we have founders and companies that are worthy of it. Mm-hmm. And we just wish that's an entire opportunity. The other thing I'd probably call out as policymakers and leaders are trying to figure out what to do. This industry is different because it's a revolving door. This isn't like a many-to-one. It's not like we're going to do this and create a relationship with Roche or Lilly. It's a revolving door. So the framework of the ecosystem needs to be what's constant, because the companies will recycle. So the Darlings of about 3 to 5 years ago have all exited. The PackSafe, the Lesson Lees, the Clear Objects, the Greenlight Gurus, they've all exited. And so you get talent that says, who's hiring? They don't even know who the companies are, right? What company, maybe I'm personally not ready to join something that's 5 people, maybe I want to join something that's 150. Mike, who are the companies that are 150 looking at a Series B? They don't know. I might have a clue, but that's just because of the nature of our business. And I would say that ignorance, I just have to really kind of call for an ecosystem that really connects awareness, that consistently is making you aware of who the companies are. Why would someone like Amy show up at an event? It would be probably to meet talent, to make sure that she's got a local brand to find talent. Mm-hmm. So I just want to call it is a revolving door of companies, and so it really commands, that each of the pockets of the ecosystem are collaborating often, and are supported by, umbrella institutions that really are incentivized to bring them all together.
Yeah. Well, along those lines, obviously, Indiana, there's not a conference that we go to now to try to figure out. All of us are trying to make more diverse organizations, and we're trying to hire for diversity. And I'd love to just talk about any opportunities or things. Darrian, as you think about going and starting the business, is there an opportunity? Is there, how can we be better at having more diversity in our organizations?
Yeah, this is something that I personally have championed since the day one of Qualifi. It's one of our core values, kind of the pillars that we stand on. And saying this, hopefully respectfully, a part of the reason that it was one of the pillars for us is we felt that it was lacking in the greater tech community here. And for that reason, I do think it's an opportunity. I have 3 other co-founders. Of the 4 of us, 3 of us are Black, and I think that looks different, than most companies here. And one of the coolest pieces where I think it's an opportunity is when I talk to our employees, it's one of the main things that they talk about that attracted them is our focus on that. So there's plenty of reasons why we should champion diversity, but if you look at it from just a talent development and a business opportunity, I think it can lead to really great things if we talk about a thriving community. I think one of the one of the ways to think about it also is if we're not pushing that and trying to foster a truly thriving community in that way, I think it lowers our ceiling. Sure, things can grow, but we're limiting ourselves if we're only focused on one community or small subset of communities. If we're creating opportunities for everyone, then I think it lifts, the rising tide lifts all boats. So that's kind of the mindset that I would have with that, and looking at it as a magnet and an opportunity and a differentiator from other communities as well. So for Qualifi, like I said, it's a core reason why people either sought us out or wanted to specifically work for us. And so I think that can be the same at a community level as well.
If I might just say, Darrian, you've done an incredible job of demonstrating that geography is not an excuse for having a highly diverse organization. You've done an amazing job leading in that way. And my head of talent in HR has taught me that, and he's taught me a lot, and I've had to be a really good listener, that it's not enough to have an initiative in speaking about diversity or in a written policy. You actually have to have it pulled through your entire organization. To recruit diverse talent is a great thing. If you don't already have diverse talent there, it's going to be really challenging to incent diverse talent to join your team. And so thinking about diversity all across the board of your organization is crucially important, and something that we're just continuing to work on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The biggest thing that I get a chance to do, and also seeing a lot of different businesses and organizations, and this is the difference between a Kroger and a CVS and all the exec tables that I now have a chance to talk with. The ones that really, really lean into this wholeheartedly are the ones that are the difference. It's really hard to differentiate a grocery store. Albertsons and Kroger's and All Whole, they're all the same. The people are the only thing that really separates them. And I think it's the same thing in technology. is these software companies. It's what employees, as we try to attract them, are looking for as well. So the last thing I would say is, and I'll say this with a caveat, is the world that we're in Indiana now is vastly different than it was 10 years ago, and we have done a really great job of connecting with one another, having an ecosystem that supports one another. David Becker was one of the first people I met with, and I just heard him say today that he had lunch with Darrian not too long ago, and so he's still giving back and meeting. And I believe that's the way it is in this entire business, and Mike helped me early on in the process. So we've come a long way, and we got to keep doing that. But I would like to hear from any of you and all of you just some of the ways that we could continue to invest in one another, help each other, and stay to where we can keep creating great businesses.
I was just going to say real quick, like that's, I think the biggest thing, one of the coolest pieces about being a part of this community. I haven't had a chance to really sit down with Julie yet, but I know these two I've had plenty of conversations with one-on-one. We've gone over product over and over again as we've been developing it from the earliest stages. Just recently sat down with Amy on the AI front to talk about, how we're thinking about, she just mentioned they listen to conversations, we record interviews. How do we think about that differently? And she's, taking steps farther in advance. So for me, I love talking to other founders. So I like just building relationships in that way. And like I mentioned on the fundraising front, sharing any advice or hard lessons learned that I've experienced so that it can be avoided in the future and that we can all kind of build together. So that's my perspective on that.
Mine pretty Indiana rooted. Take the meeting. I take the meeting. I would not have been able to found and actually start this company if people in Indiana were not generous of their time and advice to me. I still see that being a secret sauce of what's actually working in town, is that someone will take the meeting. Dave's still taking the meetings, right? And there's just, remember the selfless attitude of, you have wisdom, remember what it was like to be grinding, remember what it was like to need help. Take that meeting, finish that meeting with, who else can I introduce you to? Who else you think I should meet? That's how you spread this generosity, and that's a very unique thing. I'm originally from Chicago, and I went to Purdue, and that kind of started my ties in 2000 to Indianapolis. This is obviously home. I have a family and a business here, but that is especially unique to Indiana. That should never stop. So,
I guess on that note, one of the things I love about Indiana is, and it was mentioned this morning, the partnerships across sectors. So community, government, industry, and we're such a leader in that space, and we just need to keep going. We just have so much opportunity to collaborate and work together to make our community just best in class from a tech ecosystem perspective. We're doing so much. I just have learned a lot today by being here, resources that I didn't even know existed to me. And there's just a huge opportunity to get the word out there and make sure that everybody has access to the resources that everyone in this room is working so hard to provide.
I think to add on to what everyone said, I think it's all about authentic networking and relationships. I look back at the person I was when I started the company, and I was completely clueless about everything. And it was those people that I surrounded myself with that gave me so much of themselves and their knowledge, and was willing to make connections, whether it was from a business perspective or an investor perspective. And then it was up to me to do the work. But whenever I'm meeting a new founder or someone earlier on in their journey, I try to put myself back into the shoes that I was in when at their stage, and try to think of what I needed during that time. And I always try to leave connecting them to a couple people, because the worst thing is to have the door slammed in your face. And I think that's what's very unique about the Midwest in general. Like if you go to Boston and you go to the Silicon Valley, they're not as helpful. But because we have a community around, and because we all know the challenges that the Midwest brings, I think everybody, and we're just nicer around here, we're just willing to help each other take that next step. So.
Yeah, and I guess the thing I would add is Indiana is a small community. it's interesting how far we touch, though, outside of Indiana. So a story, the private equity company that now bought us, owned the company, they were actually invested in Cheetah, who had a ton of ExactTarget employees come over and very similar. And the fact that ExactTarget's leadership was so classy and just the way they went about their business, it actually just by default spoke volumes about how we probably built Vibenomics. So that does follow you around, and everybody talks. You guys will, you'll go out and try to get even angel investors to participate and be with you. Well, those angel investors are connected to this community and clearly in a place where they're going to know a lot of folks as well. Utilize them and lean on all of your investors and anybody who might be giving you capital. They're a great resource as well, and they want you to be successful. So I would love to dive in deeper on any of these questions, but I'd actually love to hear if any of you all have any questions for the panelists. So jump away, Mr. Hasbrook.
So I'm interested to hear the one or two top things that you wish you knew now that you learned along the way that you were talking about earlier, from specifically the ones who already exited, but maybe even the ones that are just closed around. What's the one or two things you wish you would have done differently that you know today that you wish you would have known when you were earlier stage?
Who wants to take that?
The people around you matter. I look at, like, specifically from a capital perspective, we have some of the top healthcare investors in the world invested in the company, and I could trace it back to an accelerator that I did in my first demo day. And the money you take and the people that are behind that money will lead to better and better and more qualified individuals, and with that investment opens up a huge network. So we were fortunate enough early on to make some really good decisions around our investors that paid off, and I think has helped our growth we've seen over the last 3 years. But making the right decision, not based on valuation, but who the people are and how they could contribute, is something that I really try to urge early stage founders to look at. It's not always about the best deal, but it's about who's going to help you the most and who's going to want to help you the most.
Yeah, I think for me, and I'd love for you guys to jump in as well, for me, Matt, it was two things. I wish, and they kind of tie out together, I wish I would have had a better finance person, just a finance mind with me. As an entrepreneur, a lot of times you surround yourself with go-getters and big idea and those type of people, and you forget that the people that can actually run a very, very specific spreadsheet are super important to show you the modeling, because you really need to understand all the scenarios. You have to understand when the right time to take money and not take money is and how much you need. And you can only do that if somebody has a different brain than you might have as an entrepreneur, and have that person. Whether you hire them or whether you seek help, that would be the one thing I would pay attention to.
I would say the biggest lesson learned is know thyself. If you are not routinely tapping into the passion that caused you to quit your job and start the highest risk bet of your life, then you'll lose it pretty quickly. And I am so fortunate to have had people that have picked me up off the ground along the way, and coaches, and one of them who's sitting right here, Chip Knighty, and people who have wrapped their arms around me. So know thyself. The other thing I want to say is that Indiana is such a group of get shit done people. And in 2021, I was raising my Series A. 2021, things were good out in the market, right? And investors would come and look at my projections, which were very aggressive, and say, well, couldn't you be even more aggressive? Couldn't you even have more of a hockey stick in your projections? And I said, no, because I have 20 years experience in business and I don't waste your money. So if you want me to hit my projections, I would recommend that you go with these. Well, we think you should be a little riskier. Fast forward to 2023 when I'm raising my Series B, and they're loving the fact that we are good financial stewards of capital. And so just being true to ourselves, being true to our roots, being true to our Midwest values will always win the day.
Perfect. On that note, my advice is, and this is more for like the start, is don't start a company on credit cards. It kind of goes hand in hand. And I won't
Guess
say
we buried the lead. We should have started with that today.
I won't tell you all how much debt I went into getting Qualifi off the ground, but it kind of goes hand in hand. And what I was like, the access to capital at the earliest stages, that's a very personal thing that I champion because of that. Like, I like to think Qualifi is a good company, and we're growing, we're hitting milestones, but it was extremely hard starting off. But also some of that's self-inflicted too. So the advice is more so around like being patient. It's going to be harder than you think it's going to be, and it's going to be hard. Like you already think it's going to be hard. And to your point of like milestones, projections, all that sort of stuff, it never goes as you plan it to go. So just having patience and perseverance, I think, is crucial.
Overall answer, and I do have one. I'm wired kind of funny. I try not to dwell on regrets because I use them as learning. And there's not things I wish I had done differently because I wouldn't ever give up that experience that I have learned from. And so that would actually be my biggest advice. Just be open to failing. I failed billions of times, fail every week. But you just got to learn from it. So that would be my advice. Don't dwell on the mistakes, learn from them. I'm a baseball coach on the side. I tell my team this all the time. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. If you're learning, you never lose, right? And so that would be my biggest one, is not dwell on those regrets, but learn from them.
Yeah, I think that is all the time we have, but that was a perfect question to end on, Matt. Thanks for that. Round of applause for the panelists. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.